Welcome everyone to the Psychology of Consumer Decision Making. It's my pleasure to welcome our moderator, Siobhan Hansen.
Thank you so much, Patty. Great to be with you today, and hello to everybody. Again, the session title for today, The Psychology of Consumer Decision Making, Food Choice Architecture, and What Food Service Leaders Can Learn to Drive Sales of Plant-Forward Menus. Today, we'll explore what we know about engaging and motivating restaurant customers to make better food choices for personal health and planetary health. We will also look at how humans perceive long-term versus near-term risks when making decisions. This might include how individuals weigh issues like global warming and other environmental concerns down the road versus immediate risks or priorities of day-to-day life. This session will take a deep dive psyche around the shaping of our food choices. So for everyone out there working to nudge customers toward healthier, more sustainable food choices, these insights aimed at helping you position your brand marketing and menu design more effectively, we hope that they're instrumental and helpful for you. We are so fortunate to have three experts in the field of consumer decision making. Our panelists will join us a little later, Matt Goldberg from Yale, who will share insights from the Climate Change in the American Mind Project, and Amy Cole, who will share a well-seasoned food PR executive perspective. But first up, we'll have Peggy Policastro, who will share her findings around taste-focused labeling of vegetables from a groundbreaking new behavioral research study from the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative. This study features nudging consumers towards selecting more vegetables as part of their food choices and defines the specific strategies that can positively drive this behavior. So without further ado, our first presenter, Peggy Policastro, PhD, RD, Director of IFNH Center for Nutrition Education and Outreach, and Director of Nutrition Services for Rutgers Dining. Peggy, take it away.
Thanks, Siobhan. Thank you all for attending this session today. So at the end of this session, you will be so excited about this information I'm providing, you will want to go home and change your menus, or at least think about it. Next slide, please. So I am Dr. Peggy Policastro from Rutgers University, and I am representing the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative today, as I am the research chair of the collaborative. And the title of my talk today is Edgy Veggies. And why do we want people to eat more vegetables? Well, obviously they're healthy for you. Second, they are easy on the environment, they're sustainable. But third, vegetables generally have a lower cost point than meat proteins do. And vegetables can have also a plant-based protein component to them. So for food service operators, it's a great way to have a positive impact on your bottom line by offering really tasty and taste-focused vegetables that can be charged a premium for. So I think this information will be interesting to everyone. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative. It was founded in 2014 and was the brainchild of the Culinary Institute of America and Stanford University. Next slide. The vision of the collaborative was to cultivate the long-term well-being of people and the planet one meal at a time. However, how they went about this was very unusual in that they broke down silos that often exhibit between different groups that are interested in the same type of vision. How often do you have a chef talking to a researcher academic? How often do you have a food service director talking with a senior administrator? However, with the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, we bring together forward-thinking scholars, food service leaders, executive chefs, administrators to move the needle towards people eating healthier and more sustainable by using evidence-based research. Next slide, please. So what I have here is an infographic of the guiding principles that the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative uses to guide their work and their suggestions. So what we have are 24 principles, referred to as the menu of change principles, with the left-hand side being more applicable to menu concepts, general operations, and the right-hand side being more applicable to foods and ingredients. So for example, on the left-hand side, we have something regarding grow everyday options, create cultural diversity. But the one I'm going to talk about today is lead menu messaging around flavor. And this is one of the major principles that'll be discussed and how we implemented this. Next slide. So a little bit of background. What we found are strategies are needed to increase consumption of plant-based foods like vegetables, because I mentioned before, they're healthy and they're good on the environment. They're easy on the environment. They're sustainable. And from research, we also know that food labels are a very positive way to influence consumer food choices. However, what we've been doing in the past is using food labels on healthy foods in such a way to designate the health properties of an item. And this isn't really working, we're finding. So what we thought is, what if we flip the script? And instead of using the health attributes of vegetables, we talk about the flavorness or the tastiness of vegetables instead, to see if we can guide people's choice in increasing vegetable consumption and choice by using taste-focused labels rather than solely relying on a nutrition-focused label. Next slide. So a research question: will people be more likely to choose vegetables with taste-focused, healthy-focused, or basic labels? As you can see here, we have 3 different vegetables. We have turnips, carrots, and broccoli. The words I just basically what we call basic labels, just giving you the name of the vegetable. But then we have health-focused labels such as healthy choice turnips or vitamin-packed carrots or lighter choice broccoli. But then the third type of label is our our taste-focused label. Herb and honey balsamic glazed turnips, twisted citrus splashed carrots, sizzling Szechuan broccoli, and toasted garlic. You know, it seems pretty obvious which one sounds the most delicious, but believe it or not, many people go towards the basic, or if they're trying to point out health, go towards the health-focused label. And for each of these recipes, they are the same. The only difference is how we, quote, market them. So what we're looking to do is take those ingredients and the meal preparation that's used in these recipes and to highlight that taste-focused label that we can promote. Next slide, please. So we did, in fact, that. We did a study at Stanford University in one of their dining facilities in which we looked at the amount of vegetables that were chosen with each of these 3 types of labels. So here we're showing you the carrot one. So carrots, basic label, twisted citrus splashed carrots, and vitamin packed carrots. And from here you can see there was a 41% increase in the amount of carrots that were chosen from the health restrictive to the taste focused. So the taste focused label had a 41% increase over the health restrictive label in carrots. Next slide. So our research model is to start a pilot study at one university, and we ran it over 46 days with 27,000 diner decisions and 17 vegetable dishes. However, the true testament to results from a research study is, one, can you expand it to multiple universities or multiple test sites? And are the results replicable? So that's what we did. Next slide. We took the same model and we piloted it at Stanford, and then from there, we moved it out to 5 different universities. We had it run over 185 days, 137,000 diner decisions, and we covered 71 vegetable dishes. Next slide. And this was the birth of now our dish study. Do delicious impressions support healthy eating? again, with the research question, do taste-focused labels increase vegetable choice across multiple campus dining halls? So the different 5 universities that were involved was UCS, Rutgers, my home, Stanford, UNT, and Northeastern University. As you can see from the map on the lower right-hand side, it was mostly focused on the East or West Coast. However, we did have Texas thrown in there. So we felt we had a pretty good representation to go forth with our results. Next slide. And what we found were the exact same thing that we found from the pilot study. So taste-focused labels increased vegetable selection. And just like in the pilot study, the taste-focused labels increased vegetable selection 29% more than the healthy labels and 14% more than just the basic labels. And I just find this so interesting that it's almost better just to use a basic label than to tell people why things are healthy. So the bottom line really is, if you can't promote the tastiness of something, just call the item what it is. Don't tell people why it's good for them. But we really want to promote that tasty food label. Next slide. So again, taste-focused labels increase vegetable consumption. We ran this at 5 universities. However, we ran a tray waste study at 1 university back at Stanford, and we looked to see not only were vegetable choice vegetables increased, but were they actually consumed? And what we found is with the taste-focused label, 39% more of vegetables were consumed. So not only were people taking more vegetables, they were also consuming more vegetables when the taste-focused label was given to a vegetable. Next slide, please. So why does this work? What we found is that just labeling a vegetable with a taste-focused label provides an expectation of a positive flavor experience. It sets the stage for consumers to think this is going to really taste good, so they take more of it. Next slide. So wouldn't any old label work just as well? Actually, no. What we found is that the taste-focused label was the key. When you're providing labels that are too vague, have fancy words, or list ingredients, it's not as effective, as you can see from the bar graphs, from the graph here, as the taste-focused label is. When you have vague words such as absolutely awesome zucchini or roasted broccoli, they're just too vague and people don't really get a sense of the tastiness of that item. So again, promoting taste-focused labels. Next slide. So when does this work best? Now, can you take a vegetable that's very bland in taste and just throw on a taste-focused label and expect everyone to not only take more of it, eat more of it? Not so. What we find is that taste-focused labels work best, obviously, when dishes are tastier. So it's really a way to take those wonderful vegetable dishes that are already being prepared and have them, increase a notch in people's perception of how they're going to taste and to take more of them. So if you're taking a delicious vegetable dish and you're throwing on a bland or a nutrition-focused label, they're not really going to be chosen. However, if you take that delicious item and you throw on a taste-focused label, you're going to increase not only choice, but consumption of these items as well. Next slide. So, as I mentioned before, the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative is based on the 24 Menus of Change principles. So the 3 principles that this study concentrated on was think produce first, but really lead the menu messaging around flavor. And thirdly, design healthy and sustainable operating and dining spaces. But mostly think about how you're labeling foods. It really will make a difference in items that you want to promote and you want people to consume. Next slide. So after we came up with these research findings, what we did is develop a Edgy Veggie toolkit. And this was put together by the Education Working Group of the Menu of Change University Research Collaborative. And what we did is come up with a toolkit in which people can use these concepts when they want to label their vegetables and how to do this. And this gives a really great step-by-step instruction for looking at your recipes and then pulling out those words that create a taste-focused label. And what we think is just to look at the impact of something like this. If all our member institutions in the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative implemented taste-focused labelings across all their meals, we would be serving 38,000 more vegetable servings per day. So you can see how it really has a great impact factor. Next slide. So just an example here, create a taste-focused label for your dish. These labels can be indulgent, they can be exciting, traditional. So we have some words on the bottom, such as home style and glazed, boldly, etc. And these are the types of words that we promote you use for taste-focused labels. Next slide. We would like to thank our research project funders today, Stanford, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and the National Institutes of Health. Next slide. And once again, my name is Peggy Pellicastro from Rutgers, and there you see my contact information. I want to thank you very much for attending today and to hopefully be inspired to change the way that you label vegetables. Thank you.
Peggy, thank you so much. You have inspired us. That was superb and so rich in insight about how to effectively nudge customers toward more vegetables, namely with the focus on taste. So that was super. We're going to bring up now our two panelists, Matt and Amy, to dig a little deeper into behavior change and choice. These additional perspectives will give us even more to think about as we build programs and communications focused on better food choices to support both human health and planetary health. So first up, Amy Call. Amy has spent her entire career in food communications working for global agencies like Ketchum and Edelman. She recently started her own agency, Marin Restorative Communications, to focus solely on working with clients dedicated to food systems improvement. She's also the director of communications for the Food for Climate League, a brand new nonprofit focused on identifying the optimal communications tactics and avenues for engagement to catalyze a global movement toward climate beneficial eating. So welcome, Amy. And then we've got Matt Goldberg, PhD and associate research scientist, Yale program on climate change communication. Matt's research focuses on persuasion, social influence, ideology, and strategic communication. He applies insights from his research to build public understanding and motivation to address climate change and other urgent environmental, social, and political issues. So we have a star-studded panel today. First, Amy and Matt, tell us a little bit more about some of your work and initial perspectives that shed more light on what you'd like to share today relating to consumer decision-making and food choice. And Amy, we'll start with you.
Oh, thanks, Siobhan. And Peggy, I loved your presentation. It absolutely confirms what our research, our initial research did for the Food for Climate League is about nudging people and making taste really important to the point where they're not choosing because something's nutritious. We want to do the same thing and have people not necessarily choose a particular food or eating style because it's supposed to be good for the planet. And there are the research that we'll be talking about on the main stage right after this. We'll talk a lot about how consumer behavior, some tips and what we are recommending that we can all work together to do your kind of research. You could see what scale can happen at just those universities. Imagine if the whole globe and major brands and organizations are moving in the same way towards climate beneficial eating, and they can eat all those delicious vegetables you're promoting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And Matt, over to you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So at the Yale program on climate communication, we focus on building public and political will to address climate change. And and food and climate is under that umbrella. And we usually focus on three main components: the messenger, the audience, and the message itself. When it comes to food, relevant ideas that we've been focused on is credibility and trust and social norms. So one thing that we've been occupied with is the role of close friends and family members and how influential they can be in influencing food decisions. So we're just getting that program of research started to follow up our Climate Change in the American Diet special report. You'll hear a little bit about that on the main stage from me during my talk in the later session.
Great, thank you. Well, as you can see, we've got lots of really great experts in this space, and there's a lot going on. So I was glad to hear about the Edgy Veggie Toolkit. There are great resources available to all of us. Amy, I'm going to ask you a question. Other respected organizations have tried to talk about the connection between food and climate change. Well, tell me a little bit more about the Food for Climate League and what's different about the organization you're standing up to address these very key issues.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because when we did research with in-depth interviews with over 20 climate change communications experts, food and climate experts, psychologists, people who've been dealing with this conversation, the very, very difficult conversation of climate, we did confirm that there is no comprehensive, commonly accepted communications framework for talking about all of these issues that are so complex. There have been bits and pieces, and people are doing bits and pieces, but our research, our landscape analysis also showed that people, organizations, major brands, even initiatives of consortiums of brands and universities are talking about these matters in different ways. What's different, based on our research and based on the people who are working in the Food for Climate League, is that we see a way forward for climate beneficial eating that is based for the first time ever on the basic human needs that are universal for the need for control, community, and a sense of purpose. And so we're going to come from a psychology, behavioral, and try to come up with optimal communications tactics and avenues of engagement that everybody, our goal is to try to get everybody, brands, global brands, small disruptor brands, organizations, universities, working in one particular in the same direction. And we can be a non-biased, generic clearinghouse and kind of directing, maybe a little bit of an orchestrator, to give a framework, a communications framework, because people are doing great things, but they're not communicating in the same way. And it's a cacophony that causes people to just shut down and not live and feel completely disempowered. So our framework, what's different is it's going to provide people with that really important sense of control and agency, that they actually have the power and feel empowered to make differences in the climate, that this isn't too big for any one person, that working together. It's really important that we're going to be democratizing planet-friendly eating and really promote the kinds of things that Peggy's talking about is desirable, make climate beneficial eating desirable, sexy, Instagrammable, and culturally diverse. And social, we cannot possibly underestimate the importance of the social justice nature of our approach.
That's great. It sounds so exciting. Thank you so much for that. Peggy, I'm going to ask you just a quick question, and we wanted to probably do a little bit of a rapid fire because we don't have that much time left. But if we all wanted to implement the idea of taste-focused labels on the menus, as you so aptly described, how would you suggest a chef start that process? What's the first thing to do?
Well, they can get our Edgy Veggie Food Kit or toolkit. That's a great thing that they can start with. But really look at the recipes that you're providing and start to pull out some of those taste-focused items and look at your labels and put those into it. You know, I'm sure that the chefs are working with fabulous recipes, and then there's putting up, you know, carrots there. So pull out some of those taste-focused words versus any nutrition-focused. Definitely stay away from that, or even just keeping it very vague, just like awesome carrots.
Super.
So our Edgy Veggie Toolkit, that's tough to say. Or again, just starting with your own recipes and pulling out some taste-focused words.
Perfect. Great. Matt, for you, how important are social norms and food choices?
They're crucial because a lot of the time at the point of purchase, or even just sitting around at home, people don't have the time or energy to think very deeply about each and every food choice they make. So we often rely on close others and role models to make some of these choices. So you have the social influence part of it, where there's pressure to eat or not eat certain things. But also they're informative, where we rely or we outsource those decisions to others, and so we can rely on other food leaders or close others around us to make those decisions instead of weighing the pros and cons at each decision point.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the role of identity in communication about food?
For sure, especially as it comes to labeling certain types of food. So you'll hear a little bit about this in my presentation about labeling foods as vegetarian. That's increasingly an identity label as well as a food label. And if people don't identify with it, they might reduce their interest in that kind of food because they don't identify as vegetarian. And so these different kinds of framing, as Peggy highlighted, are really important for nudging people in the right direction in terms of food choice.
Super, thank you. We've got some really good questions coming in through the chat. Let me throw one over to you, Peggy. Do you have any suggestions when dealing with pushback from leadership on increasing vegetables and decreasing meat products when feeding staff in a cafeteria setting? I bet this is something a lot of people deal with.
Exactly. I think it's pretty popular thought there. You know, what I find is that for leadership, the bottom line is finances. And if you can prove that you can increase revenue and decrease costs, it's a win. So start putting on some vegetables, labeling them with a taste-focused label, but leaving the meats on at the same time, but just looking at the increase of sales of the vegetables. And that will tell the story. You know, people vote with their pocketbook. And if people are choosing more of the vegetables because they taste wonderful and they had a great label to them, and we're going to see that meat sales decrease, that's all we need to do. But if you go into that administrator and say, this is what I want to do, you may get a lot of pushback. So let the revenue talk for itself. And again, people speak with their pocketbook.
Thank you for that. You know, I wish we had more time to dig more deeply. We're going to have another session coming up with Amy and Matt just following this one. So hopefully people will be able to see us on the main stage. I'm going to close out the session today and just want to thank each of our presenters and panelists. Peggy, great job. And Amy and Matt, thanks for coming on and supporting the conversation and for sharing your expertise and insights. It's been just terrific. For everyone working to nudge customers toward healthier and more sustainable food choices, these insights are sure to help the audience position their brand marketing, communications, and menu design much more effectively. Thank you so much, everybody. Patty?
Thank you so much, Siobhan, Amy, Peggy, and Matthew. A great session today. Siobhan, Amy, and Matthew, we'll look forward to seeing you after the break, main stage. And thank you again, all of you. And so now we are headed to a networking break, and we have a short presentation with details on how to network and engage with your colleagues here. So please enjoy this, and we will see you after the break. Thank you.